All right, so in lesson 7, we're going to divide rational numbers. And the good news about this is it's very similar to multiplying because our rules are still going to stay the same. So let's go ahead and write those down just so we have them on the front of this page. If we take a positive and we divide it by a positive, we are going to get a positive number. If we have a negative and we divide it by a negative, we are going to get a positive. And then if we have a positive divided by a negative, we're going to get a negative. Or if we have a negative divided by a positive, we're going to get a negative. So there's your rules. Let's go ahead and start looking at the first set of examples on decimals. So there's some things that we need to remember when we divide decimals. The first number always goes inside the division box. So when I set this up, I'm going to do 19.44 inside and 6/10 on the outside. The second rule that we need to do is we need to move our decimals. So the spaces, the decimal moves on the outside. Is the amount of spaces the decimal moves on the inside. So in this very first one, if I move this to the right one space to make that a whole number 6, I'm going to go from the decimal and I'm going to go one space to the right to make that 194.4. And then in kind of the last part to decimals is, before we divide, we put the straight decimal straight up into the answer. So this is going to go between the 4s. I'm going to leave that purple. So then we're going to solve our problem. 6 goes into 19 3 times, which is 18. We have 1 left over, and we bring down our 4. 6 goes into 14 twice, which is 12. And we bring down a 2. And then a 4. So 6 goes into 24 4 times. And it's really important we place that decimal in the right spot so we get the right answer. Since these were both positive numbers, we get a positive answer. On the next example 2, go ahead and pause the video and try this again. The only thing to note is that there is a bar, which makes it a fraction, but fractions are division. So first number or top number goes inside. Go ahead and pause, try this, and then check your work. So you should have done negative 3.22 divided by 1.4. Move the 1 place in, the 1 place in, and move the decimal straight up into your answer. So now you should have been dividing by 14. 14 goes into 32 twice because 14 times 2 is 28. When I subtract, there are 4 left over, and I bring my 2 down. And 14 goes into 42 3 times. Evenly. Now what we have to watch is there was a 1 negative number, so our final answer is negative 2.3. All right, let's take a look at fractions. With fractions, we have some rules with just fractional numbers. And the first rule, and I'm sure you remember this from 6th grade, is we keep the first fraction. Our second rule is we change the sign to multiplication. And our third part to the rule is we flip, or we really call this using the reciprocal of the second fraction. So let's try the first problem together. So we keep -6/7. We change this to multiplication. And then that negative sign is going to stay, but we're going to change the fraction from 2/3 to 3/2. And then we're going to follow all those same rules that we had with multiplying. We are going to look for, can I simplify first? Well, I can, because 2 goes into 6, or 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So then I can do 3 times 3 is 9. 7 times 1 is 7, and then I had 2 negative numbers, so that's going to stay positive. And then we can change that into the mixed number. So 9 divided by 7 is 1 2/7. All right, go ahead and pause your video and try the second problem. So you should have tried this now. Let's go over it. We have keeping -1/3, changing to multiplication, and then we're flipping this 11/18 to 18/11. And then we're going to look to simplify. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 18 6 times, and then we can multiply across. So 6 times 1, 11 times 1, and we had 1 negative, so we keep it negative, and we get -6/11. So it changes a little bit with mixed numbers. Just like multiplying, we have to make our mixed numbers improper. It's a must. It's not like adding and subtracting. So I think the one rule you should write down to remind yourself is mixed numbers must be turned improper. And then really all the rules from above apply. So follow the rules from above. We're still going to keep, change to multiplication, and flip the second fraction or use its reciprocal. So let's go mixed numbers first. 2 improper fractions. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 3 is 35. Keep the denominator, and don't forget to bring that negative with it. I'm going to write it as division for now. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Keep the denominator. So now I'm going to go follow all those rules from above. I'm going to keep, I'm going to change to multiplication, and I'm going to go with the flipped version, the reciprocal, and I'm going to look for any simplification. And I have it. 7 goes into 7 once. 7 goes into 35 5 times. So 5 times 3 is 15. 4 times 1 is 4. Don't forget about that 1 negative sign. Bring it on over. And then I can go 4 goes into 15 3 times total, whole number. And that leaves me 3 left over 4. So -3 3/4. Go ahead and pause and try one on your own, and then come back to the video to check. So we're going improper. We get 16/3 with that negative sign. We get 1 times 2 plus 1, which is 3/2 with the negative sign. And now we're going to do our keep, change to multiplication, and flip over that reciprocal. Look for those common factors. There are none here. There's both 3's on the bottom, and 16 and 2 have nothing in common. So we do 16 times 2 is 32. And 3 times 3 is 9. There are 2 negatives, so we leave it positive, but let's make that back to a mixed number. 9 goes into 32 3 times, which is 27. 32 minus 27 is 5/9. All right, our last one in the notes. If Camden ran 400 miles, or 400 meters, in 60 4/5 seconds, what is the average time for the 100 meters? Remember, we're dividing. I would suggest you change 6 4/5 to a decimal. So I like taking 4/5 into tenths. So when I multiply by 2, I get 8/10. So I'm really taking 400 meters divided by 60 and 8/10. So when I do that, first number goes in the box, 60 and 8/10 goes on the outside. This one gets a little tricky. When I move this decimal in, there's no decimal in 400, but I can put one at the very end and go 1 over, pull it up, and I just gotta make sure I add a 0 there. So I'm dividing by some pretty big numbers. 608 doesn't go into 4, it doesn't go into 40, it doesn't go into 400, but it can go into 4,000. You might have to do some guessing and checking. It goes in 6 times. 608 times 6 is 3,648. And then I have to subtract those. Don't forget all your borrowing rules. When I do that, I am going all the way to the 4. I'm making some 9s and a group of 10. Leaves me 352 left over, which I should have less than I started with. And then because I have 352 left over, I'm going to bring down another 0. And I'm going to see how many times 608 can go into 3,520. So 608 goes in 5 times. So this one's getting pretty tricky. That's 3,040 left over, so I'm still doing some subtracting and borrowing. I have 480 left over, and I want you to go out one more time. So 4,800 divided by 608 gives me a 7, and then you can stop right there. So what is the average time for 100 meters? 6.57 seconds. All right, so you're gonna move on and do the practice and the check for understanding.